All right, here we go. We have the artist formerly known as Napoleon of the Outlaws, who we've interviewed a few times before. Here to join us, actually live from Saudi Arabia.
Yes. What's up, Vlad? It's a pleasure to be back on your show, bro.
Of course, man. We go back.
For sure. And you looking young and every time I see you, bro.
Thank you. Healthy living.
That's good. Keep it up, bro. Keep it up.
Yeah, you look great as well.
Thanks, man. Thanks.
Well, number one, how is Saudi Arabia dealing with coronavirus and the pandemic that's happening worldwide?
Well, Saudi, they actually was one of the first countries that stopped international and domestic traveling, domestic flights, domestic traveling from city to the next city. So they did a great job. You know what I mean? Anything to do with the COVID-19, the government, took care of it. So, they didn't differentiate between a citizen or a non-citizen, even illegals. There was people here in Saudi Arabia who was illegal, and the king said, we still going to cover any medical fees that they have. You know what I mean? So they did an amazing job, definitely.
That's dope, man. That's great to see someone doing a better job in the U.S. right now.
Yeah, bro. I don't think too many. I don't think America got too many countries beat with this, unfortunately. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
it's sad though.
We're the worst right now. We're the absolute worst when it comes to the virus spreading.
Yeah.
So how long have you been living in Saudi Arabia now?
I've been in Saudi Arabia for 10 years. For 10 years, buddy. But every summer I'm back in LA. So. I balance it out. I come here, I stay the winter days, and then for the summers, I try to escape the heat. I go to LA, which of course is much cooler, but you know what I mean? I enjoy it. But this summer, of course, because of the virus, I'm stuck in Saudi. But I'm thankful.
Good. Well, I'm glad that you and your family are safe right now. That's the most important thing.
Thank you, bro. Same to you.
Well, I want to get back into your whole story again. So in one of our interviews, we went through the really tragic story about how some men came into your house and killed both of your parents.
Yes.
So I want to pick up from that moment and in terms of what happened to your life after that, because now here you are with your brothers. You have a sister also, right?
Nah, just brothers. No sisters.
Brothers. So,
yes.
Okay, sorry about that. So here you are with your brothers and you guys are without parents.
Yes.
So what happened to the family, to you and your siblings after that?
So after the death of my parents, me and my brothers, man, we was blessed enough to have my grandparents on both sides, ready to take us in. But we moved with my father parents in Irvington, New Jersey. And, they did the best, according to their ability of what they had to raise me and my brothers and my cousins. You know what I mean? But eventually we got caught up in the streets, you know what I mean? So my grandmother, I grew up in a house where it was not only just my brothers, but it was other relatives, it was cousins, it was aunties, it was uncles. My grandmother didn't turn no one around, you know what I mean, away. You know what I mean? So we had so many people living with us, which I enjoyed it growing up. And I'm thankful to have, grandparents the way, they took care of us the way they did. I'm thankful for that, definitely.
Okay, but you started getting caught up in the streets, and at one point you started selling crack.
Yes. I started, my brothers and my cousins, they started before me. And so, they was outside on the block and at early ages. When I was 13 years old, the first time that I tried to sell drugs, I got arrested. You know what I mean? I don't think I last selling cocaine or crack for more than maybe 6 months. You know what I mean? So I was on a block one day. No older than 14 years old. I would say 13 to be exact. So I was on a block one day, and back then we used to sell crack vials. The cocaine and the vials. So the police came, they pulled up, and I tried to run into the store, and I took the drugs from out of my pocket, and I threw it into the refrigerator or the freezer with the ice cream and stuff that they had in the corner store. And I walked back outside, and I was arrogant because I felt like I just outsmarted the police. So they seen me run into the store, so they knew I was up to something, you know what I mean? So they pushed me, they start checking me, and I didn't know that one of the crack vials slipped into my pocket. So they arrested me, you know what I mean? But I was so young, like I said, I was only 13 years old. They took me to the station, smacked me up a couple times, called my grandmother, and took me home. But from that day then, I was like, you know what? I'm gonna try to figure something else out to get up out of the hood. I want to do something different. And that's when I started writing poetry, started writing raps, you know?
Well, along with getting in the streets, you actually got kicked out of school. You were considered one of the worst students in that school, right?
Yes, that's high school. In high school, you know, we got a new principal that came in. And before her, we had a principal. This dude was cool. He was Italian. You know what I mean? I forget his name, but he was too cool to the point that if the students want to lie and say we came from his office, he would take up for us. You know what I mean? But he was a cool dude. And eventually they got rid of him. And they brought in a principal African-American lady who was tough. And she called me to her office and she was like, man, I asked for the names of the worst kids, the top 10 or top 20 or maybe 100 or whatever kids in the school, and your name was at the top 10. And she was like, if you mess up one more time, we kicking you out. I didn't take her serious. You know what I mean? I thought she was like the prior principal. You know, we can do whatever we want. I joked around, made some more mistakes, and she kicked me out. But at that same time that she kicked me out of school, I already knew Pac. So I had to make a decision to go to night school or try to pursue my career in the music industry.
Okay. And you knew Pac through Gaddafi?
Through Gaddafi, yes.
Okay. And from what I understand, because there's a bunch of outlaws, there's a bunch of guys from Thug Life and so forth, but Pac and Gaddafi were the closest in terms of relationship.
Yes, for sure. Agree. But it was also Edie, also Castro. When I came around, you know, Pac clique was, of course, he had the Thug Life, you know, Mopreme, Rated R, Big Psych, Macadocious. He had the Thug Life clique. But the Outlaws, before it was the Outlaws, they was Young Thugs. You know what I mean? So when I came around, it was Young Thugs, and it was only Gaddafi. He was known as Hollywood. Castro was known as K-Dog, and Edie was known as Big Mouth. It was them three. You know what I mean? And that was their crew. So when I came around, it was before the Outlaws. They still was Young Thugs. And then Pac called, you know, when he put me in a group, he decided to name us Dramacidal. And then eventually we went to Outlaw Immortals, or Outlaws for short.
Yeah, it's kind of ironic, you know, in 2020 where you have one of the big hip hop artists named Young Thug.
Yeah.
who's compared himself to Tupac before.
Oh yeah? I ain't even know that, man.
Oh yeah, no, he compared himself to Tupac, and then this other rapper from Atlanta named YFN Lucci, who was, I guess, beefing with him at the time, he said Tupac didn't wear a dress. Called himself New Pac, and you said Tupac didn't wear a dress.
Shit, I don't know who I was talking to.
You don't know nothing about that. Okay.
Tupac didn't wear a dress, though. Big up.
Tupac didn't wear a dress. Trust me, I've done more Tupac-related interviews than anybody. Tupac did not wear a dress.
Facts. True, bro.
Right. Yeah, so you guys were called the Young Thugs.
Yeah, so we was the Young Thugs, man. And we did a few songs as the Young Thugs. And then eventually Pac decided to call us Dramacidal. It's like a Bay Area slang that they used to put back then on words. They would always add the word sidal on it. Like, you know, he's Dramacidal, he's crazy sidal. It's just a Bay Area slang. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I guess the first time you met Pac and you told him the story about how your parents got killed, Pac was actually crying.
Yeah, he was crying. And it shocked me, you know what I mean? Because at that part of Pac's life, at that particular time, he was very controversial. He was always in and out of the media, the newspaper, always on television. He was a controversial individual, you know what I mean? So always getting arrested. So, you know, when I went to the hotel room, and I mentioned this in my book in details, but when I went into the hotel, I went there with the mindset that I have to prove to Pac how much of a street dude, because I was really on the streets, Vlad. Like, I was on the streets every single day around hustlers, around killers. I grew up in that environment. So I said to myself, man, I'm going to impress Pac with, you know, where I come from. And Pac shut that down, though. You know what I mean? He wasn't really, he shut that down. He didn't want to hear that type of talk. He was like, man, that's going to waste my time. You know what I mean? So he was like, but I want to know what happened to your mother and father, because Yasmin, which is the mother of Gaddafi, who introduced me to him, you know, she must have told him the story briefly. You know what I mean? So after I was telling him the story, man, during me telling him the story, I look up and I seen tears coming down his eyes. And I was shocked because, you know, the television, they put this image out of Pac like this macho man and always in trouble. And I was able to see another side of him from that day. You know what I mean? And that's the side that I knew him until he passed away. He had that sensitive side with him, that he cared for the people deeply,
Oh yeah, no, Tupac was really sensitive from
Definitely.
everything that I've seen.
Definitely. You know what I mean?
I just interviewed Richie Rich a few days ago.
Richie Rich, OG.
He told me that he knew Pac early on. He actually used to come by and sell weed to like Pac and the Outlaws and stuff like that.
I serve him the weed and get his number, give him my number, boom, and I pull up out of there. And we kind of just start hanging from there. But he was more into he was on the Black Power kick that time. This wasn't Death Row Tupac.
Did you ever run into him early on?
Of course, Richie Rich, yeah, because when I first met Richie Rich was what's my man name from Digital Underground? Humpty Hump. What's his name?
Shock G.
Shock G. Shock G had a wedding, so Pac flew us all out there to Oakland, and Richie Rich was there. All his homies from the Bay Area was there, but I knew Richie Rich I knew Pac always speaking about people like Richie Rich, E40, the Governor. So I always heard about these names when I first met Pac. So when I met Richie Rich, him and Pac was very close. You know what I mean? They had a real close relationship, a dope relationship. And he's a legend, Richie Rich.
Oh yeah, no, and he was kind of explaining how when he first met Pac was the Black Power rapper.
Yeah.
He had like the like the Nefertiti necklace. And, he didn't wear any gold, no Rolex, no nothing. That's when his first album came out.
Yes.
And he was really like Black Panther, Black Power, and so forth. And Richie Rich was like, well, we're on some gangster shit over here. So,
yeah.
But he said that over time, Pac started to kind of change and kind of get more gangster in his lyrics.
Yeah, I think you can say that because Pac evolved with what he went through in life, you know what I mean? And I'm sure Richie Rich and them will agree with that. That, Pac, like everybody, like anybody that got caught up with a gangster lifestyle and got more aggressive, it's because of the environment, put them in that situation, made them start behaving in this, situation or with that attitude or that mindset. So the same with Pac, you know what I mean? Because like what's my man name? He was in Pac group. He was Pac rap partner. Ray Love. Ray Love. So Ray Love and Pac was in the group together, and Ray Love was like when he first met Pac. Pac was hustling. You know what I mean? Even though he was around gangsters, he was around killers, and they was in Oakland, and Pac was selling drugs. And when the lady came to buy drugs off of Pac, and she was pregnant, Pac said he would never do it again. So he always had that, you know what I mean, that side of him. You know what I mean? So when people try to say like as if he just became a gangster, no. Pac always had that military Black Panther mindset because of the way he was raised, but he also had that street gangster with him. Like he was on the block. I think everybody got somebody in the neighborhood that's like that. Like he can be streeting on the block with us, but he more conscious than the rest of us. And Pac was that type of person. You know what I mean?
Well, at one point, Pac was on set doing the movie Gang Related.
Yes. And
I guess there was a situation with Jim Belushi that happened.
Yeah, Jim Belushi. I think he bit Young Noble Hamburger. And Pac was up, like Pac wanted Noble to check him. You know what I mean? But we was kids because we didn't know we would have messed it up for Pac. So Young Noble probably was like, he told Pac, like, I don't know if I would have, reacted. And because Pac felt like Belushi was like saying slick stuff, you know what I mean? Through the whole set. And it was kind of rubbing Pac the wrong way. So Pac ain't really like that. When he came into the trailer and just looked at Young Noble Hamburger and bit it and put it down, Pac didn't really like that. Like he too comfortable and to a degree it was kind of disrespectful. You know what I mean? So he told Noble, you should have stood up. But Noble like, man, you would have kicked it. You probably would have got kicked off the movie set. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, because remember, Pac ended up getting into it with the Hughes brothers over Menace to Society and ended up just saying, F this movie, and just walked out. True.
Because he ain't really want to, it really all became because they wanted Pac to play the role of a so-called Muslim gangster. And Pac was like, Pac got a lot of Muslim family members, cousins, his big cousins, his aunties and stuff like that. So he come from a family of Christians and Muslims like myself, you know what I mean? And Pac had some cousins that grew up Muslim, was born Muslim, like his cousin Yusef and them, and Bill Bang, which is Castro's brother. he became Muslim. Kenny also became Muslim. So Pac saying that what Islam done for his family, in the most sense, it made most of them positive people. You know what I mean? The ones who really practice it. So he probably felt like that's betrayal, like for me to play a so-called Muslim gangster. So he got, Pac was a hothead.
Well, the situation happened in New York.
Yes.
With Ayana Jackson.
Yes.
Where Pac was ultimately convicted of some form of sexual assault in that situation.
Yes.
Now, for the longest time, Ayana Jackson never spoke. But since our last interview, the interview you and I did a full interview with Ayana.
Yes.
Did you watch this interview?
I seen that interview. That was a few years back, right?
It was.
Yes, I seen the interview.
It was.
Yes.
Based on what being with Pac and talking to him about that situation.
Yes.
And what she said on camera, what was your feedback on it?
Knowing Pac, man, and he was raised in a house full of women. And his respect that he had for women, like his mother, his aunt, his sisters. I know Pac, he would never disrespect a woman in that manner. You know what I mean? Like he would never do something against a woman will. And we know that. From what I recall is that, it was dudes in the hotel at that particular time. Pac was in another room. She was in another room. And of course, I can't really go into detail because of my religion. You know what I mean? So I have to try to, not just openly speak about this thing. But from what happened, when Pac was in a room and he fell asleep, his homies or the guys who he thought was his homies was in the other room taking advantage of her. You know what I mean? And Pac, he wouldn't agree with that. If he would have woke up and he would have seen that situation happening, Pac would have stood up for Ayana. No doubt, because Pac, that's the type of personality he had. He would have never been down with something like that. You know what I mean? So that's why he was more upset that why blame me for something that I have nothing to do with? You know what I mean? Just because these dudes disrespected him. But that comes with the territory. I guess they look at it like, well, it was your hotel room. You invited her. But still, he was innocent, hands down. You know what I mean?
Well, even though we never got to speak to him on camera, I did have conversations with Charles Fuller, AKA Man.
Wow.
Who was the co-defendant in that case.
Yeah, I wonder how he doing.
He's cool. He's working, I believe, in Oakland. He went on with his life.
Definitely.
And he watched the whole interview, and me and him talked about it. And he said, there were a few things that were different, but more or less the story she told was more or less what happened. Now, the way he described it was Pac was in the room with a girl. He walked out and the other guys walked in.
Exactly.
Okay. But, you look at this through a 2020 lens and you say, okay, I invited this girl to my hotel room, because me and her have been having, relations.
Mm-hmm.
And I left and let these other guys go in and do whatever. Pac didn't play a role in terms of shielding her and protecting her and so forth, which he could have done. And the other thing about it was that, and I remember I talked to Charles about this specifically.
Yes.
When she woke him up and she was like screaming and everything, they did all this stuff to me. Pac's first reaction was, get this bitch out of my face.
Wow. Who said that? Charles or she? Man said this? Or
They both said it.
Okay.
They both said it. And I remember I said, Charles, if at the time that this girl got hysterical and Pac, instead of his reaction, try to calm her down and say, hey, listen, I'm sorry. Let's go hang out. Let's just get up out of here. Let me calm you down. Would none of this have happened? Would she have not gone to the police? And he said, absolutely.
Well, you got to understand, man, Man and Pac fell out. And I'm not, was Man saying that he was standing next to Pac's bed when this lady came and that's kind of like, you know what I mean? It seemed like she ran into Pac's room because I heard her interview and I heard Pac mention that she ran into Pac's room and woke him up, but I don't think Man and them followed her into Pac's room. You know what I mean? It's he say. At the end of the day, man, you know, the lady know what happened. Of course, God knows. The lady knows what happened. Pac knows what happened. And I think even Pac said that he wished he would have been able to protect her. He mentioned that, you know what I mean? He admitted that
Right.
that his only mistake was that he wasn't able to stop whatever was about to happen. You know what I mean? From happening. You know what I mean? So he admitted that, but they arrested him as if he was a perpetrator within that crime. You know what I mean? So that's why he was upset. And that's unjust the way they did him.
Yeah, and I think that during that time, and you know, men oftentimes mature, but
Sure.
you know, Pac had songs of, you know, wonder why they call you bitch.
Yeah.
And he had songs, you know, like All About You, which are misogynistic songs.
Yeah, but he came out with these songs after he got lied on about raping a woman. Like if you look at Pac, he wasn't doing these type of songs attacking women before that. You know what I mean? He was doing Keep Your Head Up, Dear Mamas. And then when he got, you know, went to prison for something that he didn't do, he got angry. He started, even his lyrics and everything started changing. You know what I mean? And he said it. Pac said, man, what changed me is that I used to do songs for women, especially women of color. And then a woman of color accused me of doing something, exploiting her sexually in a way that I never done it. And I got sentenced to prison for this. And I used to do songs for the people in the neighborhood, for our community. And then people from my community who looked like me shot me. And that's when you start, you know, that's when pop music started changing. When he went through them two incidents, when he got shot in New York and when that girl lied and said he raped her, that's when everything changed for Pac. His personality, he became more angry. You know what I mean? He changed his music, his personality, everything.
Yeah, and that was actually going to be my next question, is that after the shooting, you know, it's sort of everything that he felt he had done for black people and how he never felt like a black woman would accuse him of anything. He never felt like a black person would shoot him. But both things happened, both of them from black people. And it seemed like it kind of messed him up.
It messed him up. It happened within the same, you know, time period, the same time frame. So back to back, you know what I mean? And that's when he started changing. And he said it. You know what I mean? He said it. Like, and if you look at his history and you look at even from his lyrics, people can actually see when he started to change. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I guess after the quad shooting, he was kind of hiding out at Jasmine Guy's house.
Yes. Jasmine Guy took, you know, she looked out for him.
Was that someone that he was having a relationship with or just a platonic friend?
I think they were just friends, you know what I mean? Platonic friends. I think she had a lot of respect. She was close friends with his moms as well, with Jada Pinkett. They was all, you know, they known each other for years. And Pac trusted her. And you know, she wasn't involved in those street activities at all. So he knew that coming to her house would be a safe place. She pretty much looked out for him.
Did you see Jada Pinkett around?
At that particular time, no. In general, I seen her, like, you know, when he was in the hospital in Vegas, when I believe also, you know, when they had the memorial for him, she was around. She came around, but I haven't seen her during the death row days or nothing like that, you know?
Okay. Now, he gets convicted of the sexual assault situation.
Yeah.
And now he goes to prison. And you're actually going out and visiting him in prison.
Yes. Myself, the Outlaws. Actually, when he went to prison, myself, Edie, Castro, Gaddafi, we all went back to Jersey. Me, Castro, Edie, Doughboy, D-Boy, who was Pac cousin from North Carolina. We was all staying at my grandmother's house. You know what I mean? So while Pac was in prison, he wanted us close to him. So we was in Jersey staying at my grandmother's house for the whole summer. Gaddafi was with his mother, of course, you know what I mean? And we would take turns going back and forth up north to visit him.
What was his mentality like when he was locked up? Because from what I understand, the cops really, I mean, not the cops, but the COs really hated him because he was so anti-police. He had shot 2 white cops in the South. He had a Black Panther family. And the cops, you know, the COs took it personally. From what I understand, they'd be like, oh, here comes a gangster rapper.
Yeah,
and
I remember
they would just mess with him a lot.
Yeah, I remember they messed him up when he said one time that they called him like a... And he was shocked. He was looking at the other inmates like, what? And they was like, you know, it is what it is. What can we do? We you know what I mean? We inmates. We have no rights up in here. So that messed him up when he was like, you know what I mean? The disrespect from the COs. But Pac held it down. When we used to go visit him, he still was the same. He was joking. You know what I mean? Laughing, joking. He was more focused, of course. You know, we'd come up there, he'd spit some of his lyrics that he was doing, that he was writing in there. And that's the first time I start seeing him like, write on paper, bad boy, scratch it out. You know what I mean? I saw him changing, definitely. And he had every right to do so, you know what I mean? From what he just went through.
Right, because Who Shot You came out while Pac was locked up. And I remember I talked to the producer of Who Shot You. You know, we were DMing online. And I'm like, did that have anything to do with Tupac? And the producer said, absolutely nothing. It was done before the situation, everything.
Yeah, but why put it out? Like, why rush to put it out at that particular time? It just wasn't a wise decision. You know what I mean? Either they try to to capitalize off of what Pac was going through. If it wasn't about him, it just wasn't wise to put it out at that time. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, and I remember when I was talking to Richie Rich, I guess Pac had written him a letter and said, hey, Suge Knight is talking about bailing me out and I would be joining Death Row and so forth. You know, what do you think I should do?
Yeah.
And Richie Rich hit him back and said, I don't think you should do it, man. You got the #1 album, you're on Interscope and so forth. Wow. And then Pac wrote him back, and at the top of the letter it just said, hey man, this guy's getting me out of prison and I need to get the hell up out of here. So I'm going to need to do what I need to do.
Facts. He had to do what he had to do. You know what I mean? Interscope just left him hanging. Interscope left him hanging. And a lot of people don't know that Suge was trying to get Pac on Death Row prior to that. Like, he always wanted Pac on Death Row. I remember seeing an interview where Suge said that they was all in the Interscope building, if I'm not mistaken, and Pac was with like his rated R, his Thug Life homies and Big Psych in them. And he was like, I was trying to talk to Pac then, like, come to Death Row. And Pac was a hothead. You know, he just stormed out of the meeting. You know what I mean? And Suge was like, then he wasn't ready. So he already knew that he wanted him on Death Row. You know what I mean? So he made that call and he had to do what he had to do.
Yeah, and when he hit Death Row, it just took off crazy.
Yeah, man. It went to another level. And it was like, him and Suge, that combination was, it was a deadly combination, because Pac needed somebody that can balance him out. And Suge was just like Pac. Like, so Pac said, come on, I want to go knock this dude out. Suge would be like, come on, let's do it together. Like two kids, you know what I mean? Pac needed somebody to say, nah, you the little brother, you the star of the company, sit back here, let us handle the work.
Okay, well, speaking of Thug Life, one of the members, Rated R, actually is in prison right now doing life over a murder. Yeah,
unfortunately. You know what I mean? Unfortunately, he been locked up for, I would say, man, at least maybe 15 years or so, or maybe longer. I'm not sure. You know what I mean? But I spoke to him last summer. You know what I mean? He's holding his head, being positive. We trying to bring some attention to his case because from what it seemed like, it was self-defense. One of his big homies that came home from prison from his hood kept trying to push up on him and came to his house and he defended himself. And the dude died. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's just a lot of tragedy when you look at Pac's inner circle.
Yeah, bro.
Like, for example, I just had, Edie on VladTV recently, and he pointed out that he's the last living person from Hit 'Em Up, including the producer, Johnny J. You were the last surviving person on that song.
Depressing, sometimes, to think about that. Because even Johnny J is gone.
Yeah, even the producer.
Yeah, and another record, All About You. Because even Nate's not here no more.
Yeah, bro. When I seen that, that's why I called Edie. I was like, I never even looked at it like that. You know what I mean? And Johnny J, a lot of people don't know I did a whole solo album with Johnny J. Like, I was close with Johnny J. Like, he called me one day, was like, Moo, I want to do your album. He produced my album, but then when I became Muslim, I moved to Saudi Arabia, and I kind of like, you know what, I don't want to put the album out. And next thing I know, I get a call a couple months later that, they say he killed himself. They say that, you know what I mean? But God knows it was some like fishy things surrounding his death that didn't add up. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah. I mean, just look at all the people that are gone. I mean, you got from the Outlaws alone, Gaddafi's dead.
Fatal's
dead. Big Psych is dead.
Yeah, it's sad.
Rated R is doing life in prison. Pac is dead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's sad, man. When you look back, sometimes I look at a picture and majority of the people in that picture is gone. You know what I mean? Big Psych, Gaddafi, Fatal, Pac. It's sad, definitely.
Very sad. A lot of tragedy. A lot of tragedy with people that should still be here right now because none of them are that old when they passed. Or
all of them was young. You know what I mean? All of us is young. Gaddafi, I think when he passed away, 18, 19 years old. Big Psych, 40s. Fatal, 30s. Pac 25. Most people, they get shocked when they hear that Pac passed away. He was only 25 years old when he died. You know what I mean? And most people, they surprised at that. I think Pac would have changed and matured up and just been a different person, God willing.
Yeah, I mean, the body of work for a 25-year-old is just unbelievable.
Yeah. He was a hard worker, bro.
All right, so you apparently had a situation where you snatched Puffy's mic?
Yeah, man, that was it was crazy. You know what I mean? We got invited by Tretch to come to MTV Awards was doing they was honoring Biggie and Pac. And at that particular time, Tretch had a song out dedicated to Pac, and Biggie had and Puffy had a song dedicated to Biggie, and I didn't want to do it. You know what I mean? Of course, at that time, our manager, Steve Lobel, he was trying to really get us away from, our small circle and try to get us to start rubbing shoulders on another level. So he was like, I think this would be good for your career to show that y'all on stage with Puffy. And I was still in that mindset back then, like, I can't do it. You know what I mean? But the rest of the Outlaws is like, we have to do it. You know what I mean? It's good for our careers. Even Big Psych was there, like, man, do it. And I was like, man, no. So after a while, I came up with this plan, and kept it to myself. I was drinking, of course, and intoxicated. And I said, I'm going to wait till we live on TV and I'm going to just snatch the mic from Puffy. Like, while we live, you know what I mean? In rehearsal, I'm already, drinking and drunk. So in rehearsal, I'm saying lights and flashing, and I can't differentiate between rehearsal or live television. So while he had the mic, I just still snatched it from him, you know what I mean? And he came and tried to grab it back. We got into a little tussle. The security came. They kicked us out. So the Outlaws was, they was upset. Steve Lobel, Tretch was upset because he put his name on the line. And Shakim, like I said, Shakim, that's family. So Shakim came, to our room, was like, Puffy want to speak to you and you got to come alone. And I went to like this little side room. He was there with his boys. They could have got me. You know what I mean? I don't even know why I done it. So I went in the room and Puffy was there with his boys and he was like, why you do it? I said, why I done it, man. Let's not even go back and forth. You know what I mean? And it was one of them things, man. I was just a young, wild dude that, my emotions I couldn't keep it together. And yeah, it happened.
Okay, so he just let you go at that point?
Yeah. He, it's not he could have done like to, you know what I mean? Like I still have my everybody was with me around the corner. He was just probably trying to figure out. I remember him saying, "Why did you do it?" You know what I mean? And I think Big G is Edie uncle. He was the only one in there with me with Shakim. And I'm feeling uncomfortable because I'm looking at Shakim. Shakim was family, so I know he's not going to put me in a situation that's detrimental for myself, detrimental. So I'm looking at Shakim like, why do you bring Puffy with all his boys to security? And you tell me to come along. Good, G came with me, but I'm like, why you bring me back here? And Puffy was like, why did you do it? And I was like, why I done it. You know what I mean? We can't even, let's not. And I remember him saying something like, man, I saw I'm about to move to Europe. I'm tired of this mess. And then we just walked away. Never seen him again after that. But I'm sure that's probably one of the reasons our careers didn't really go up, because at that time, people were still hating on us on the radio and we felt blackballed at that particular time.
Well, you were there during the situation when Pac ran into Nas.
Yes, I was there.
Okay, and apparently you brought all your Jersey guys with you, like 30 guys who all had guns on them.
Yes, we was deep. We were strapped. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I remember we I saw an interview that Snoop did that we had on our channel that said, Snoop, I guess, was there also. And he said that like Pac had 100 guys with guns and Nas had 100 guys with guns. And it was a very tense situation.
Yes. What Snoop was saying, like pretty much from what he said, it wasn't accurate when he was like like Nas gave Pac a pass. Like Snoop exact words was like, you know, I'm from the streets, I'm a gangbanger. So I seen that if Nas wanted to, he could have, you know, rolled on Pac, which far from the truth because, like I said, I was there with Jersey, all my homies was there, and we were strapped. And then you had Gaddafi and Fatal Boys was there, they were strapped. And then you had the Outlaws, then you had Death Row members there and the security there. Don't get me wrong, Nas was deep. I think if it would have went down, it probably would have been a bloodbath. It would have been an unfortunate situation. But I appreciate the way Nas and Pac handled it. You know what I mean? I think that's something that, and that should go down in the history of hip hop, that two generals was able to show the rest of the people how to confront a situation manly, talk it out, shake hands, and move on. You know what I mean? So I think it was dope the way Pac and Nas handled it.
Well, prior to the Vegas incident, there was the situation when Snoop was in New York and he got on the radio and said that he has no problems with Biggie or Puffy or whatever, that those are his homies. But I remember in an interview you recently did, you talked about how previous to that, Snoop was in the studio with Pac dissing Biggie and Puffy.
True. You know what I mean? That's why Pac, people was making it seem like Pac was just this angry hater. You know what I mean? That he was trying to bring other members in Death Row to come and partake in his beef with Bad Boy, but that's not true. Pac and Snoop fell out, not just because he went on Angie Martinez and said that that's my homie, because if that's how he was from the beginning, Pac would have respected that. You know what I mean? If he would have said to Pac from the beginning, like, look, man, I don't want nothing to do with this beef. They my homies. I can't get involved. Pac would have respected that. But when Snoop was in LA, he was doing songs dissing Biggie, talking bad about Biggie and Puffy. You know what I mean? Then go to New York. Remember that when they were shooting that video out there, Biggie got on the radio and some people came and shot at him. He went back and started doing diss track records against Biggie. So Pac is the type of person, if you come straight forward and say, nah, I'm not getting involved in your beef, he's going to say, no problem. So he wasn't mad at Snoop because of that. He was just mad that he felt like when Snoop was in LA, he was riding with him against Biggie. Then when he came in New York, he said he wasn't. You know what I mean? So that Pac was hurt.
Well, do you remember any of the verses that Snoop was doing against Biggie and them?
He has some verses, man. I don't remember offhand, but I remember hearing him like literally mentioning like, you know, Biggie's size and you know what I mean? And I remember Dead Eye. I remember him really coming at Biggie. You know what I mean? Like he was coming at Biggie, man. It wasn't definitely no secret. So that's why Pac was upset. You understand? Like Pac loved Snoop, and I'm sure Snoop loved Pac. We ain't gonna take that from him. They had a really good relationship. But Pac wasn't just mad because he got on there and said that's his homies. He was mad that he felt like he was playing both sides, you know?
Yeah, and I guess you feel some type of way because Snoop never really admitted to any of this or came forward with it.
I said it in the, you know, when I kept hearing these interviews, it seemed like Snoop kept throwing Pac under the bus. And that's the only reason I spoke about it, because I was ignoring it. You know, when I seen like a lot of interviews, it seemed like Snoop was just pushing Pac, like throwing Pac under the bus. It was an interview I seen that he did with Jada Pinkett. And Jada Pinkett was getting on Snoop for using the B word. And somehow he just brought Pac name up again. You know what I mean? Like, well, Pac is the one. So I just felt like as a friend, you Pac friend, you shouldn't always bring him up in negative conversations because he's not here to defend himself. And you say you his friend. Like, let us remember him in a positive way. We already got too many people that's trying to, you know, highlight the negative things that Pac did, because of course he made many mistakes. He was a young guy. So as a friend, you should highlight the positive things, you know what I mean? And it seemed like he always highlight that Pac was the one bringing him back to disrespecting women and stuff like that. So that's why I spoke about it, you know what I mean?
Well, the Las Vegas incident where Tupac gets killed. Since our last interview, I sat down with Keefe D, who was the last surviving member in the car that shot Tupac's car up.
Yes.
Did you watch that whole interview?
I didn't watch the whole interview, you know what I mean? I think I checked a few minutes and I just couldn't watch it, you know what I mean? Because for me, it's like, it's difficult to watch an interview of someone who admitting that he was in a car with the people that killed a person who was like a brother to me. You know what I mean? So I couldn't do it. You know what I mean?
Did you know who Keefe D or Orlando was before that situation?
Not before the situation. After the situation happened, it was kind of like a war in Compton after that. You know what I mean? And then we start hearing like they from this hood. Keefe D, nephew was Orlando Anderson. Orlando Anderson he was known to be a rider. You know what I mean? He was known to be a legit gang member. He was known to be a gangster. That's what it was, words on the streets. You know what I mean? But I never heard of him before that. I knew about their hood. You know what I mean? Because I used to go to Compton a lot with some of Suge little homies. So I kind of knew about, what place to go to, what try to stay away from, but I never heard of him. You know what I mean? I knew, for example, that when Puffy and Biggie was coming to LA, they was hiring them for security. That's how the first time I think I started hearing about the Southsiders.
Well, Keefe D lays out the whole story. What led up to this whole situation, the night of, the actual shooting, and then the aftermath of that particular event. For anyone who thinks that there's a conspiracy that Suge had Pac killed or the government somehow had him killed, just watch that interview from beginning to end and you'll see the exact timeline that matches up with everyone else's timeline that was actually there. And from what the rumors that I had heard was that the arm that stuck out the window was not a skinny arm like Orlando's. It was more of a beefy, muscular arm.
Yeah.
You heard the same thing?
I heard the same thing. You know what I mean? I heard the same thing that I kind of even heard that Orlando wasn't the one that, of course somebody in that car done it, but it wasn't him. You know what I mean? And like I said, man, when it comes to these type of things, even if they get away from it in this life, you know what I mean? They ain't gonna get away from God. They gonna, you know what I mean? You can run, you know what I mean? You can try your best, you know what I mean? Because Pac, unfortunately, you know what I mean? We know in the streets these things happen, Vlad, you know what I mean? I just wish that Pac, because he's a very intelligent person, we can't change the past. I just wish that night he would have reacted different, you know what I mean? Because he know better. Like Pac is the type of person, like he used to teach us not to do these type of things. But unfortunately, when it's your time, it's your time. You know what I mean? What can you do?
Yeah, I mean, me and Edie, we talk a lot. We're friends. We live close to each other. We hang out. And he has always described it as just a perfect storm of bad events. How just, they should not have seen Orlando in the MGM. That car should have never ran into Tupac's car. Like all these things just kind of went very, very badly.
Yeah.
And it all just kind of fit together.
When it's written for us to go and for us to die, you know what I mean? It's going to happen. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I guess, when you talk about just a perfect storm of bad events, if you really think about it, after a situation like that in the MGM, right, when everyone knows they just stomped out someone from the Southside Crips, which is the enemy gang of essentially Death Row.
Yeah, true.
And Mob Piru. You would think, okay, at this point, we need to get into a bulletproof car. We need to move in a stealth-like fashion. We need tinted windows and so forth. But from what I understand, was the day before Suge Knight bought that BMW.
Wow, I didn't even know.
And it was the top of the line 7 Series BMW. So, there was no X5s or X7s at that time. So you're talking about the very best car from one of the top manufacturers. Yeah. So Suge probably wanted to show that off.
Exactly.
He wanted to floss in it, and he had his little homie with him who was the biggest star in the world.
Yeah, true.
He wanted everyone to see him. He wanted the windows untinted because he had just got the car.
Just got it, yeah.
And because of that, which I'm assuming is what happened, of course. You get a brand new car, of course you want to ride it around.
Yeah, you want to floss in it, you know what I mean? And
you want to floss in it.
And also from that a gang mentality, especially, maybe Suge homies, and I don't know, I can't speak for them, but maybe they probably thought, okay, we're in Vegas. This is not LA. Maybe they don't have that many guns with them. Maybe they're not going to try this, not too many of them. So they probably thought maybe when we go back to LA, we're going to really have to be on point. But we in Vegas, this neutral grounds for everybody. This nobody hood. So I guess they felt lax. You know what I mean? I guess they felt like it couldn't happen then. And it did, you know what I mean?
Well, yeah. I mean, in the Keefe D interview, we talked about how after the MGM incident, they were hanging out with this guy Zip, who was one of Puffy's guys, and they got the gun from him.
Yeah.
And there was the rumor that Puffy was supposed to pay like $1 million or whatever for the hit. And just recently, I interviewed TK Kirkland.
Yeah.
Do you know where I'm going with this?
No, I want to hear, but TK Kirkland,
Okay.
funny though, man. Go ahead.
TK Kirkland
was
actually best friends with Eric Von Zip.
Wow.
They were roommates.
Yeah. Wow.
And TK Kirkland confirmed that Zip got a $500,000 payment from Puffy.
Wow.
But Zip kept that money.
Wow. So he confirmed it pretty much that.
He confirmed it on tape. And Zip is now dead.
Yeah, I already died.
Zip died of cancer. But Zip took that money and bought like a nightclub or something with it.
This is crazy.
And never gave it to Keefe D in Orlando and them. Well, the story that has circulated was that after Tupac got killed, Puffy allegedly gave the money
I heard
to Zip.
Yes.
And Zip was supposed to give the money to Keefe and them.
Yes.
But he never gave the money to him.
But thank God he never gave him the money, right? Think about it. If he gave the money, Puffy will be in prison now, money for hire, a murder for hire. So thank God. It's just a true story. I'm not saying yes or no, but if he would have gave them the money, it'd have been a murder for hire and Puffy would be locked up.
But, in a way, that kind of saved Puffy, because had that money been handed over, then Puffy could have potentially been up for a murder for hire. But since he just gave this dude some money and the guy kind of kept it, and now he's dead, Puffy can't really be tied into nothing.
Man, that's crazy, bro. That's crazy, man. But I wouldn't be surprised. You know what I mean? I wouldn't be surprised. Because we also heard these rumors, And when you're a scary dude, Vlad, like from what I knew, and I'm talking about during those days, during those times, Puffy was very intimidated of Suge. You know what I mean? So when you're a scary guy and you have money, it's easy for you to pay someone to do your dirty work.
Well, we're just speaking about Big Psych.
Yeah.
When you talk about Thug Life, one of the members is actually doing life in prison for murder right now.
Yeah, rated R. Rated R.
Okay, you knew him?
Yeah, I know him very well. I was close with Rated R. He was a homie. I spoke to him in the summer. You know what I mean? I spoke to him last summer. I was trying to help bring some attention to his case because I have a friend of mine who just came home. They tried to get him 55 years in prison for having weed, Weldon Angelos. You know what I mean? So he just came home after doing 15 years, and then he get invited to the White House a lot, and he trying to help Loon. He trying to help a few other people get out of prison early. So I put him in contact with Rated R. So Rated R, you know what I mean? From what it seemed like his situation was a self-defense. One of his big homies came home from prison, tried to push up on him. And Rated R, from what they say, he defended himself. And the guy died.
Well, you had a situation, I guess, after Pac's death where you confronted Ice Cube?
Yeah, man. It was I was at there was a producer guy named One Eye. And he was cool with me. I had a group that I was trying to put on from Jersey, and he used to produce for him, but he also was producing for Cube at this time. And one day he called me to the studio, and he's like, maybe you'll get on this track that I did with Cube. And back then, my whole mindset was like, look, loyal, Pac comes first. I don't care about the track. I forget the songs, but it seemed like Cube used to take like shots at Pac. You know what I mean? And so I forget the exact song, but I asked him in the studio, I'm like, yo, Cube, man. And that song, it seemed like he was dissing Pac, man. Was you dissing Pac? He looked shocked because he probably like, this guy, we invite him as a guest in the studio and he coming at me like this. And he looked shocked on his face. He's like, no, I wasn't dissing Pac. He walked out the room and he never finished his song. You know what I mean? And I think he probably took 30 minutes, 40 minutes. And so I left. And like the next day, the dude one night called me. He was like, "What did you say to Cube, man?" He was upset. I was like, "Nah, just asked him, did he, was dissing Pac?" And he was like, "Man, you messed up a chance of you being on the song with Ice Cube." And then, but you know what I mean? My goal back then, Vlad, my mind frame was like, my loyalty come with Pac. Like, I'm not gonna try to, now that Pac dead, people taking shots at him, and just because I want to, further my career, I'm just gonna, I just couldn't do that. You know what I mean? That's why I couldn't be on stage with Puffy at the MTV Awards. I just couldn't do those certain things. Maybe for career-wise, it probably would have been best to do those things, but back then I couldn't do them. You know what I mean?
Right, and you and Little C's actually got on the phone at one point.
After he spoke with Young Noble. Little C spoke with Young Noble, and they got on the phone with each other, and they was beefing, like barking at each other, and then the conversation went to a positive tone. And, they started talking like, man, after 20-some years, we still angry at each other for what? And Noble told me what happened. And he was like, man, I said, give him my number. Give me his number. I want to holler at him. So I spoke to him, and it was all love. You know what I mean? It was all love. We never met each other. You know what I mean? He was just riding for Biggie. We was riding for Pac. 20 years later, both our generals is dead. Why continue this ignorant stuff? Because you never know, man. If Pac was alive, he probably would have squashed the beef with Biggie. You know what I mean?
I agree. I definitely agree. Because these are 20-year-olds, man. 25, 23-year-olds, just...
Young kid. They kids. You're right.
Yeah. Well, since our last interview, Suge took a 28-year plea deal.
Man.
When you heard that news, because, well, at one point the Outlaws were signed to Death Row, and I remember that it wasn't all that great of a situation. I remember me and Edie, we just talked, and he was saying how Suge had some sort of disagreement, with the Outlaws or Interscope, and he ended up stopping the promotion of the Outlaws album.
Yes.
So, were you on that album as well?
Of course, yes. I was on that album.
Okay.
I was the one who went to Suge Knight personally in prison, looked him face to face and said, we want to get off Death Row. You know what I mean? Because I didn't want to go behind his back while he was in prison. They just wanted to send a lawyer to him. And I was like, no, I think it's right that let's do it like men. I want to go to him face to face and say, look, release us. And he said, okay. He was in prison at this time. He's like, no problem. Y'all don't want to be on, I ain't withholding nobody that don't want to be down. Okay, I'll let y'all go. But he never released us. 2 months, 3 months, 6 months. So then we had to sue him. It wasn't no money involved. We just had to sue to get released from Death Row. So I guess at that time he was upset. Like he spent money on the Outlaw album. He put us in, when we first went back to LA, we got kicked out of pretty much every hotel you can think of in LA. And he kept paying, like, you know what I mean? And then he put us in a house in the valley. We destroyed this house and he kept paying. So I guess when we got off of Death Row, and he said it, like he felt like we owe him. You know what I mean? He felt like we owe him. And I told him another time that I was able to face him when he came home. And, me and Suge cool now. But when he first came home from jail, there was some fiction. So he ran into Edie and he was like, yeah, y'all owe me money. And I remember Edie called me and I said, what did you say? Edie's like, I just ignored him. And I was like, nah, Edie, man, you can't ignore a person like that. You supposed to, where he at? And that's when I called Bone, you know what I mean? And I called Bone and I called like my cousins and my brothers. I'm like, Sugar's at this studio, let's go up there. And we strapped up and we all got strapped and we went up there and we confronted them. And I was like, Suge, let me holler at you. And we sat down, you know what I mean? And my homie Quim, Reeve, Rod, all of us, not Roddy, my brothers, Bone was there. And I said, Suge, I heard you say we owe you money. Because I'm the type of dude, Vlad, I'm not a big gangster. I'm not none of that, but I'm the type of person, I know street politics. You know what I mean? I know Suge, you know what I mean? And I seen how Suge move. If he say you owe money and you don't confront it, then you owe money. You just gonna have to pay him. You know what I mean? So I said, no, I'm gonna try to nip this in the butt now. So I went there in the studio, we sat down with Suge and he was like, yeah, you owe me money. And I was like, I don't feel like I owe you nothing. You know what I mean? I was straight up with him. And I think that's why he always had a lot of respect for me because I always was honest with him and straight up. And he was like, okay, I'm just going to get it from Interscope, from the white man. That's what he said. You know what I mean? And then after that, our relationship just grew. It got better and better. You know what I mean? Because we Pac homies, he Pac homie. What's the reason to keep clashing? You know what I mean?
Well, when you heard about his 28-year plea deal, what'd you think?
I felt sorry for him. Because he had an empire. You know what I mean? He had an empire and it was sad that, he went from the top to the bottom and that way, that style. You know what I mean? Bone is a close friend of mine, of course. So, you know what I mean? I was upset what happened with Bone. And Suge is also, we became friends. We grew to have mutual respect. It just was a sad situation. You know, we don't wish that on nobody. You know, 28 years in prison. It's just sad, man. Like Suge, like Pac, he should have had people around him. Like, I think Death Row was worth $500 million. He's supposed to have people around him saying, nah, you can't act like this, man. You know what I mean? Like, how you gonna behave like this when you come to this level? And you can't behave like that when you got to know how to adapt. You know what I mean? And unfortunately, he didn't want to adapt. And the people that he was running around scaring, they will get you eventually. You know what I mean? They was waiting for a reason, and he brung it to him. He brung it on himself, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, you can't bully the whole world.
Nah.
You just can't. You could bully who you think you could bully, but once you start dealing with people with money, these people are gangsters in their own way.
In a whole nother way. They gangsters where they put you
Yeah.
in a cell. You know what I mean? And you can't do nothing. So, and it's just the mindset, man, that when you really come from a hood and you make it, you try to change. Like, you don't want to run around look for trouble. That's the last thing you want, because you say, look where I come from, look how far I came. Why would I, you know what I mean, jeopardize this to try to act like a gangster? It's just sad that happened to him that way. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, number one, you live in Saudi Arabia and you have your own coffee shop.
Yes, MW Cafe.
Yep. So congratulations on that. And you got a book coming out.
I got a book coming out. It's written by a friend of mine, Suleiman Jenkins. He from Brooklyn, you know what I mean? So that's dope. He from Brooklyn, New York. Been living in Saudi for 20 years. He's an amazing writer. He's an educator. You know what I mean? On the academic level, he was able to take my book that it doesn't matter if you from the hood, you Muslim, you Christian, you black, you white, you street, you not street. The way he wrote the book, the style, everybody will be able to relate to it. You know what I mean? And believe it or not, Vlad, man, I know probably every rapper says this, but my life is crazy. Like, you know what I mean? And when I read it, even reading back, I'm like, I thank God that I was able to survive this. You know what I mean? Like, it's stuff that, you know, grown men, after we gave the book to a few grown men, they broke down crying. You know what I mean? And he wrote it in a way where it's not, you know, it's not where most rappers, when they write books, they want to just portray how hard they is, and you know what I mean? But he did it on an academic level that's amazing, that I think God willing, it's going to go, you know, it can be beneficial for the people. You know what I mean? I'm going to send you a copy, man. You tell me what you think.
Oh yeah, no, I definitely want a copy.
Definitely.
And you know, when you and I first started sitting down and you told me the story of your parents, I mean, I started to cry myself. It's just
definitely
something that no child should ever experience.
Definitely, man. And that's just one part. You know what I mean? That's just like, after the death of my parents, it didn't get easy. You know, and my brother was he was the man on the block. You know what I mean? My brother became the one that everybody had to buy work from. And so the same dudes that we grew up with, who we thought was our relatives and friends, they end up trying to kill my brother. You know what I mean? So similar, what happened to my mother, father almost happened to my brother while he was in the house with his wife and his kid. So my whole life, it just been drama. And then I meet up with Pac, and then the situation, and then Gaddafi, and then, you know what I mean? I didn't really feel no peace and a normal life until I became Muslim, you know?
Yeah, and here you are living in Saudi Arabia with your family, your kids. There's no violence, there's no crime, there's no drama. You're running a legitimate coffee business.
Definitely.
Yeah, man. Congratulations on turning everything around, because
Thank you.
Statistically, you should not be here right now.
Yeah, true. Thank God. You know what I mean? Thank God. Definitely.
Yeah. Well, Muta, man, until next time.
Appreciate you, Vlad. It's always a pleasure, bro.
No doubt.
All right.
Peace.
All right. Peace.